Okay, hello. I don't know if we're live. I may quite possibly be live right now. This is a little bit of a test, but I'll also use this as an opportunity to do an update. I knew I'd cough. Now, this last week we had the Extreme Improv Extremes World Championship tournament, and that was part of the Extreme Improv Extremes World Championship Festival 2022. But the festivities haven't quite ended. There's going to still be a couple of guest shows this week, a couple of activities, and I'm really excited because it means that as things start to calm down after the excitement and everything of the World Championship tournament, we still get, it's not just back to reality. Oh, I'm slipping away here. Right, it's not just back to how things were, and there will still be some great stuff this week as well. Now, I am doing this as a little bit of a test stream, just because tonight's show, our guest show with Tragically Unscripted, which I believe is at 11 p.m. UK time. That's going to be very exciting to have, but I'm just going to make sure that everything is working for the stream, just because recently I changed over how I use Zoom. And so, I wasn't using Zoom from my old account to get, they had some offer on. And to be able, I couldn't just upgrade it. I had to create a new account to do it. And so I was just making sure that everything was working as it did on the old account. Hence why I'm doing this test stream. But I was like, well, I could just do a test stream and hey, this is a test. I really should have had a drink with me when I was doing this. But I figured that I may as well use this to do a couple of updates. The World Championship tournament last week was so exciting. Hannah McGowan, very excited for her to be the third annual Extreme Improv Extremes World Champion. Obviously, last year we had Laura Hughes. The first Extremes World Champion was Ashley Edwards in 2020. And I look forward to, in a few months' time, having the third annual. When I say third annual, it didn't quite work out, it was annually, just because I'll explain this in a second. But the next Extreme Improv Extremes Team Championship, I'm sort of holding the iPad so it doesn't fall over here. But the next team championship. And the reason it wasn't quite annually is that the first one was in November 2020, and then the second one was in February 2022. So technically it skipped 2021 entirely, but it was still the one from that year, if you get what I mean. It was that year's one. It was just pushed forward a little bit. That was partly because just spreading out the championships, I did the first World Championship in August 2020. And then I decided to do a team-based one, which was then in November. So I figured August to September, October, November. So it was 3 months apart. And that was cool. I don't mind them being 3 months apart, but then it meant that there was a very long time until the next one. And we had the next World Championship at the end of July 2021. And so bringing it forward by a couple of weeks, it meant that it would have only been still 3.5 months difference if I'd done it in November again. So I just thought, well, if I go from July to August, September, October, November, December, January, February, that's about halfway across the year. And I think that is actually halfway. And I think I counted August. But it was the end of July, but it ended basically on August 1st or something. So yeah, I believe as it is right now that I'm going to target the next team championships as being February again. Seemed a decent month to do it in. But before then, in October, I believe, I'll have the exact date soon. We're going to do another festival where there'll be lots of guest shows and some cool stuff from Extreme Improv Extremes. But it's not just going to be about improv. It's going to be any kind of theatre, any kind of shows, and that is the Virtually Unstoppable Festival. Now, I'm a big believer in virtual theatre. Let me give you this as an example. So on Sunday, Extreme Improv had 2 shows, and that's nothing new for Extreme Improv, but it was the first time that we'd ever had a live show and an online show, on the same day, a live in real life, an IRL show and a virtual show on the exact same day. And the hassle, I've told this story a little bit at the start of the grand finale of the World Championship, but the hassle of doing the getting back from London to do the live show with trains and everything was a nightmare. And literally championship started maybe only about 10 minutes late, but I should have been like ready to, I should have been home from London like with 2 hours to spare, and then it started 10 minutes late. So what a nightmare that turned out to be. Luckily, I didn't think like, oh yeah, an hour would be enough. Luckily, I gave myself 4 hours to get back, and it was insane. But anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought. So I had a live show and then the online shows. And what I can say is organizing stuff for the live shows is so very much more difficult than doing the online shows. Now, lots of people out there have not got used to doing online shows. They never did, not during the dark days of the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. And I would say to anyone that didn't get used to doing online shows is that get used to it. Just it's a new skill. If you went to drama school, drama college, university, taken courses in acting, you're probably going to have taken courses in stage acting or maybe screen acting. And performing for virtual theatre, like this is a live stream, is a different kettle of fish again. And if people weren't used to it, then it'll feel like, oh, this isn't quite what I was expecting. This isn't quite what I'm used to doing. But it is just, it's something else. So there's acting on stage, there's acting on camera for film or television or whatever. And then there's virtual theatre acting, just as there's radio acting, and it's just a different skill, a different muscle that you have to build up, and you build up the skill set. So the Virtually Unstoppable Festival is going to be all about virtual theatre, and there's going to be some scripted stuff, certainly from Extreme Improv, and that's always been the weird thing because I do a lot of scripted stuff. And Extreme Improv originally started off with a different name, but it was doing improv. Then I started doing scripted stuff, and having an improv-based name didn't make sense. Then when I returned to I never stopped doing improv, but then when I created the show Extreme Improv, people really latched onto that, and they just started calling the company Extreme Improv again. And so it became like the offshoot, and then it kind of became like the bigger thing that I do. And so then Extreme Improv has taken over all things again. But this will be me going full circle, round and round, to do some more scripted stuff, and not just scripted stuff, but just like other types of theatre, other types of virtual shows, just to see what creative stuff we can do. And I've got some cool ideas for what's going to make this so it isn't just, not there's anything wrong with having these amazing guest shows, but so it isn't just like random guest shows like you'd see at a festival, fringe festival or whatever, where it's just like there's lots of unrelated guest shows. One of the things I love so much about the World and Team Championships is that there is something that runs throughout, and it builds up throughout, and it hypes things up. Whereas if you just have guest shows, then it's like, well, if the guest show you're in is on Tuesday, when it's Wednesday, you're kind of disconnected from it, or you feel like the festivities have kind of come to an end for you. So there is going to be something to keep this whole shebang going. And I'm very excited about that. And so what else can I say to you? I don't know how long I'm going to keep going on this Extreme Improv update, but it coincidentally is one of the things which I said about that I need to do a lot more of. It's like a little bit of a vlog sort of thing, so just people know what stuff's going on. keeps you aware of the updates, rather than me just being like, oh, there's this thing, and then afterwards you don't hear from me for weeks on end. Obviously, we have the shows every week, but we've got more live shows coming up. This last Sunday we did the show in London during the day was the London Anime and Gaming Con, and it was such fun. We had a few technical difficulties, but it's improv, so you work your way around them. And other than these technical difficulties, I thought it was like a fantastic show. We had a big audience there because it's at a Comic-Con event, so tons of people were just watching the show and so enthusiastic about giving suggestions and everything. And we're going to have another one of these at the Portsmouth Anime and Gaming Con this weekend. But also now that the World Championship itself is over, I need to start getting my head into the UK Championship, which will be a one-night event live on stage. If that all goes super well, which I hope it will, Then the plan is next year to do it as like a multi-night event. And whether it's the UK Championship or a World Championship on stage, I don't know yet. It'll be one of the two, or maybe both. Or maybe there'll be a team championship. I plan to always have the online shows. Like, I feel more solid in the online shows than just the live shows, just because good as the live shows are, there is so many logistics that go into them, so much time, so much cost, so much promotion needed and everything like this. Whereas the World Championship, I think the final number of people that took part this time, because there's been a couple of reasons which I don't need to get into, but reasons why I was a little bit behind where I'd like to have been to organise the participants, the guest shows and everything. And so in some regards, it wasn't, I basically had it last a very full week, and then there's some bits and pieces around it. But like in the past, in 2020, it ran throughout the month of August. There was stuff like most days. And obviously the World Championship tournament, again, only lasted 7 or 10 days that year. This year, I streamlined it to being across 7 days, but just the amount of performers that wanted to be in it increased throughout. And so I think there were 49 or 50 performers involved. But then we had our biggest ever final, where when it was all said and done, there was 12 participants in the final, which was an increase, because in the past, it was funny just the way I worked it, because in the past I would have 8 quarterfinal rounds, and from the 8, 2 people would go through, and then there would be 2 people, then 2 people, then 2 people, then 2 people makes another 8 on this side, and then the same on the other side of the brackets. And from the 8 on each semi-final, 4 would go through. And I was like, by doing it that way, I had, I think initially 64 performers in them, but it meant that by the time 64 started, and by the time you got to the semi-finals, there were only 16 left, and then only 8 would go through to the grand finale. Where I was like, can't I work it this year so that more people have more than just one chance to get into it? Just because, especially if there are new performers getting involved, they might not have told as many people to tune in, so they might not have some the votes that some people who know the drill do have, and they could rally their friends and stuff to vote. So by allowing more people to go through initially, it then means that people really upped their game for the semi-finals. And my God, the standard for the grand finale was incredible, and it was incredibly close at the end there. I never revealed the order of the wins and stuff at the end. There's bonus points throughout. Some of them will be down to how I score things, because some of the games will be where the audience will vote something. Some of it will just be by how well people have done, by how long a monologue lasts, or how long they go without making an error, how many lines they get through, or how many jokes they tell. I don't do it ever by quantity, but I take it as a consideration alongside quality. So there are a smattering of bonus points, but they really only are the icing on the cake, just to give me a picture of how things are going. And then the big vote comes at the end, and it was absolutely insane this time. So many votes. But yeah, this is all kinds of exciting stuff with Extreme Improv. I'm going to stop this soon just because I've got my hands down here holding the iPad so it doesn't fall over. And if I go like that, you see it. Although I can, it's leaning, but it's going to slip, because that's what it did at the start of the video. So let's see if I can just revive this hand, just because it was holding the edge of the iPad for 10 minutes. But yeah, so tonight we've got Tragically Unscripted, and that's going to be a very exciting thing. I'm going to check. Imagine if I'd done this video, you wouldn't be able to imagine if I'd done this video if it hasn't worked. But imagine if I'd done this video and it didn't work, and I've just been sitting here talking to myself effectively for 10 minutes. It's a weird world we live in, where you can now have a lengthy conversation just with no one, with yourself, talking to a camera, and it's I'm speaking to the listeners, to the audience, to the viewers, but you might not actually be out there. And if no one watches this, then effectively I was talking to no one, regardless of whether or not it actually works streaming. So yeah, anyway, we have the UK Championship coming up on the 20th of September at the Cockpit Theatre in London. I'd love a lot of people to get involved. So come and get involved if you are just want to watch it, want to support the performers. We're going to announce the performers in about a week's time, I guess. And before then, though, we have the show at the Waterside Theatre in Aylesbury. So do check that out if you're in Buckinghamshire. They're always some of our best shows ever. It's a great audience. And then we've got the Anime and Gaming Con. So lots of exciting stuff. And this year, like, there hasn't been as many live shows. Like 2019 was absolutely insane because there was over 50 shows. And that was before like the virtual shows. But we were starting like the Radio Rumble shows back then, although it may have just been called the Extreme Improv podcast or whatever. But then at the beginning of 2020, they were rebranded to be like chat shows, Radio Rumble shows, and just so that you know, they weren't all muddled up. And then when the pandemic happened, then that all kind of went away and everything focused on the extreme shows. But the Radio Rumble shows, I do plan for them to come back sooner rather than later. So I'm going to start working out when they're going to happen as well. And the way they work is basically, this is one of the reasons why Extreme Improv Extremed hit the ground running when the pandemic hit, is because I'd done a version of our stage show, but for like audio. So it would work as a podcast and we would film it, but I always told everyone, like, even though I'm filming it, keep this in mind as it being a podcast first. So it's got to work for audio. And so I had the set of games that we did for Radio Rumble, because they worked for audio with the bonus of that there was a camera there. It meant that all of them instantly worked for the streaming shows. And so it meant that like my show was ready to go before the pandemic even was a thing. I've rambled on enough. I am going to do more videos like this. So if you liked this, give it a like in the comments well, where there's a like button. Give a comment if you liked it. Share it or don't share it if you don't want to. Don't quite know what the value of sharing this is, but if people know Extreme Improv and like Extreme Improv, then share it. I don't know. And subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Extreme Improv. This will be where you're watching it because it's the only place I can